the stereotypes of a nation with the best long distance runners, athletes in the world, temporarily have made us a popular as an ancient country, which is ancient civilization. The single story narratives about the Ethiopia and Africa are all quite negative and, full of pessimism only, I think.
Hello and welcome to the second episode of Global Ambassadors Program. I am Anshika Singh, the Managing Director at International Council on Human Rights, Peace and Politics, and I would like to invite the guest of today, Mr. Estifanos from Ethiopia. Thank you, Mr. Estifanos. Would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Okay, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me. My name is Estifanos Dereje from Ethiopia. I'm a social anthropologist and project manager recently. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. So I wanted to start off our discussion with single story narratives. This concept was given by Adichie, and it states that there are certain narratives which reduces the complexities of a culture or about traditions of people in general to a single narrative. So these narratives are repeated again and again, and it in a way perpetuates stereotype about people and places. So I wanted to know your opinion about single story narratives and how it has impacted Ethiopia or in general Africa or perception of Africa. And does it impact the way your country interacts at a global level and the international perception about your nation? And if that is the case, I want to know what you think about these single story narratives and how it can create a global impact for the people of that region.
Some of the single story narratives of Africa are rather generalized and too broad as compared to Ethiopia. But one example is that Africa is thought to be a single country or a state as a whole, And another is the language spoken by the people living in Africa, which is presumed to be called African again as a whole, even the language. This is very wrong. Though Ethiopia is still a part of Africa, but does share most the stereotypic narrations in the case of Ethiopia. And the stereotypic narrations are followed by certain chosen events or happenings. For instance, like the 1984, 1985 famine incident on the northern part of the country has given the as a stereotypic of a nation, in my opinion, hunger and poverty also, and conservative, um, it leads to the stereotypic narrations. For instance, like the consecutive marathon and long distance run championship wins have given us the stereotypes of a nation with the best long distance runners, athletes in the world, and the heritage, the monuments that aged thousands of years existing contemporary have made us a popular as an ancient country, which is ancient civilization, and the other difference is in the fact that though it is still considered a stereotype, the single story narratives uh, um, pick out some of the good qualities of Ethiopia, something which is worth saying and something which is not depicted as a, bad or the dark as it's done within Africa as a whole, and also Ethiopia's unique history sometimes uh, uh, grants a special diplomatic attention and positioning its as a regional culture leader, and I think the other difference is in the fact that though considered stereotypic, the single story narrative speak out of some good qualities of Ethiopia, something which is saying something which is not depicted as a bad and dark, and good athletes and also known for its ancient civilization has its own perks, but the single story narratives about the Ethiopia and Africa are all quite negative and full of pessimism only. I think, in my opinion, it's like that.
Do you think that people who focus on the negative aspects or the negative attributes about your country due to these single story narratives, they often overlook the positive aspects like technological advancement or the complex structure, cultural traditions that your country has. Do you think that is one of the drawbacks of the single story narratives? Because you've already touched upon the positive aspects. And I wanted to know if like the youth can change the situation. Like, what is the role of youth in changing the narratives and like challenging the narratives and bringing their own narratives and making them a definitive account of their identity and about their country? Do you think they can play a role in shaping new narratives and challenging the?
Yeah. I believe the young people, the youth, is very, useful to manage and to shape the foreign policy, the diplomatic relations, and the stereotypic narration. Even, you know, like a single story narratives lead to the stereotyping and a lack of understanding of the true diversity, within Africa and Ethiopia. So this can result in oversimplified views where individuals and cultures are not seen as multidimensional or capable of varied achievements. So the youths are very, very important. Even more distinctly these narratives. When we come to the narration, these narratives often shape the international aid and the foreign policy. Even for instance, like the portrayal of Africa as uniformly impoverished or war-torn, can lead the one size fits all approach to aid, and which may not address specific needs or empower local communities. In the case of Ethiopia, a focus on famine, like I said before, the famine can overshadow the need for investments in infrastructure, education, and technology. So the youth, the young peoples, for both Africans, any Africans in Ethiopia, I think that they can shape the foreign policy, the diplomatic relations, the aid allocation and prioritization, and then the large scale, you know. So even the youth that can influence the public perception and media representation, even, So we can narrate, we can narrate the reality, the reality we have seen, and the informations about the facts, So I believe that this stereotypic narration influences, for example, like as an Africa, perceived mainly through poverty and conflict, leading to policies focused on aid rather than partnerships, and the aid dependency, narratives overshadows the efforts for self-advocacy and equitable negotiations. So when we come to Ethiopia, focus on famine limits engagement to crisis management, overshadowing broader corporations. So, and also the aid allocation in prioritization is very important, in Africa, in the large scale, the aid primarily directed towards emergency reliefs, neglect the long-term developments, discourage the investment in the infrastructure, the education, and technology. So this the young and the youths, I believe that, in my opinion, we have the strong ability to turn over the narrations in the reality, to show how Africa, how Ethiopia has good qualities, developmental skills, resources, good places to visit. It's a very, very fascinating and interesting place to go. There is a lot. So I believe, especially influencing the public perception in the media representation also, that's the good weapon that's the good platform, to narrate. Especially in Africa, media often highlights negative aspects, reinforcing stereotypes and the donor fatigue, So positive positive stories are less covered, So people perception and influencing policy is the key, in media focusing on this success in athletics, for example, in Ethiopia, historical heritages, the northern achievements in challenge, limiting international understanding. That limits international understanding. So I believe that that the youths are good, very good, and it's a very useful power to encourage and to narrate.
On the point that you made regarding media, I wanted to ask if the youth today in Ethiopia is able to use social media as a tool to challenge the existing systems, or in a way raise their voice against the injustice that they're facing on a day-to-day basis. And if so, how can they utilize such platforms to raise their concerns or convey or express their concerns to a wider audience, or gain maybe international traction to it? What would your advice be for young people who are navigating through these challenges, and how they can overcome or maybe find a voice for themselves?
In my opinion, that as I mentioned, that the youths are uh, very powerful. They are we are open-minded. We should read. We should see the politics. The informations, the platforms, so that we can we can use the platform to manifest the human rights, even the human rights influence, so that we can bring significant reforms are needed to ensure even the human rights, and also these narrations, these stereotypic narrations. So the youths should read, should engage, you should use the platforms to engage, network is very important. So especially when we come to the youths, for example, like the UN uses the UN use programs, they are very helpful to engage, to interact with the the youngs. So young can play a crucial role in addressing the challenge of narration and also stereotypic narration, or raising awarenesses, by volunteering and support the youth programs, promoting the unity, the good informations, healthy informations. So I believe that works. Yeah.
So you mentioned about the human rights landscape change in Ethiopia, and I wanted to ask you a question on that, because from an Indian audience perspective, whenever I come across some news from Ethiopia, it's mostly, like you mentioned, the negative coverage about the Tigray conflict in Ethiopia, and rarely do we get any local perspective on what's the situation like and what's the ground reality, because most important stakeholders are often not heard, or like their voices are not considered to be important in discussion of such issues. So I wanted to know your viewpoints on how the Tigray conflict has changed the landscape of human rights activism in your country, and what kind of new challenges has it posed to the civilians, and how do they navigate through those challenges on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, uh, to give some backgrounds about the Tigray conflict, it's a well-known conflict in our country recently. So the conflict duration was the Tigray conflict began in November 2020 and lasted for 2 years, profoundly impacting Ethiopia's human rights landscape. So, parties involved, the conflict involved the Ethiopian federal government and the Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF), so leading to the widespread violence and instability. So the human rights abuses, numerous human rights abuses were reported, including the sexual violence, the torture, the pre-treated by various armed groups. So targeting of civilians. Civilians were, deliberately targeted, so resulting in massacre, destruction of villages, widespread fear among the population, so the sexual and gender-based violence also was there. Sexual violence was used as a weapon, as a weapon of war. So this affects women and girls, with many surviving faced trauma and stigma. So uh, the following war in November 2020, and many more human rights violations followed that altered the human rights landscape. So uh, we can we can also mention the conflict in Conso Zone in November 2020, Maikadra massacre. It was also in 2020. So Matakal massacre, it was also December 2020. So it's a lot, the Axum massacre, and also so uh, this led us to widespread displacement, humanitarian crisis, economic hardship. So millions of people have been displaced internally and across the borders. So serving the shortage of food. So humanitarian crisis was also there, surveyed the shortage of food, water, medical supplies due to blocked and aid routine, access to humanitarian assistances. So, in particularly among the children, have been reported, a lot of information was there. So economic hardship also, one of the issues that we faced in the conflict, has distributed economic activities, leading to loss income and unemployment and poverty. Agricultural production has been severely affected, so impacting the food security even. So there was even an access to education and healthcare was also affected. Schools and healthcare facilities have been damaged or closed, limited access to education and medical services. So uh, the main point that I like to mention is also the ethnic tensions and the discriminations was also the hot area. The conflict has heightened ethnic tensions. It has also a psychological impact. The ongoing conflict have caused a significant psychological trauma, particularly among the children and the survivors of violence.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, like, how do human rights activists in your country, like you, try to navigate the situation and bring some kind of change in the lives of people? Like, if you could give a brief about your work and like how usually human rights activists in your country are able to navigate through these challenges and able to achieve what they are trying to achieve through their actions.
Yeah, the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission in our country, it's called the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. That this institution faced practical and legal challenge in protecting and promoting human rights. So Ethiopian scholars and human rights organizations, including the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, so Amnesty International, the UN Human Rights Commission, have criticized the government's human rights record. So at that time there was a movement, humanitarian aids, media, and also the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission has struggled to fulfill its responsibilities due to various challenges, and it's often criticized for its lack of effectiveness. So I think there was a problem, and also at the same time there was a lot of institutions work on this. There was a movement, humanitarian aids, to give serious informations all over the world about what's happening, so about the solutions even. There was a discussions on the media, between the government parts, and also the societies, the parties, to solve this problem. So I think some movements were useful, and I think that to even to help the end of war, So like the UN human rights, even the local human rights commission of Ethiopia also, I think they tried to stop the war, even to help those problems like humanitarian crisis, the displacement, the economic hardship, there was a lot of investments, aids, all over the place that the war was going on, So it was like that, yeah.
I think that incorporating their emotions into developmental projects or in assistance is important, and how can like say new leadership skills help these people to define their everyday peace indicators and to be able to define what peace means to them on a daily basis. Do you think that is something which is required at the moment?
Yeah, I think especially the youth can apply the crucial role, the challenge of the Tigray conflict by the raising awarenesses, educate and inform others about the situation through the social media, blogs, and community discussions, counter misinformation. That was a role, especially when we come to advocacy, advocate for peace, human rights, and justice by engaging with policy makers, with the NGOs and international organizations, and also volunteering and support. It get involved with the humanitarian organizations to support relief efforts, uh, such as providing aid to displaced individuals or raising funds for essential services. That's quite important to show how these things are going peacefully. Especially for the future. It gives an awareness to engage how to solve our problems. Promoting unity, as I mentioned before, promoting unity is very important. Work towards that, making dialogues and understanding among different ethnic and community groups, to promote reconciliation and prevent future division, So, and also the mental health support, like uh, uh, advocating for the participants in providing psychological supports, counseling services to those affected by the conflict, especially children's, women's, survivors of violences.
I think you've very well summed up how volunteering and youth involvement is important to address these challenges.
Thank you for giving this chance, and I'm very happy to engage with you this fascinating and insightful talks.
I can
I want to
definitely agree to that point of Ethiopian people being home, and I had a lovely conversation with you today. Thank you so much for being a part of this, and I
thank you so much.
hopefully we'll stay in touch and we'll get to invite you for
Yeah,
more events like these. Thank you so much.
sure.
Have a
You're
good day.
welcome. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye.